Thank you. As far as the morning keynote, I wanted to introduce Dr. Alistair Cockburn. He's voted one of the all-time top 150 technology heroes for his work in creating and steering Agile software development. He co-authored the Manifesto of Agile Software Development and the Declaration of Independence, created the first Agile Software Development Conference, co-founded the Agile Project Leadership Network, served on the board of the Agile Alliance, designed the Crystal family of Agile methodologies, and co-founded the International Consortium for Agile. 3 of his books have won Jolt Awards and have been listed in the top 100 best software books of all time. And he certainly receives good feedback on all his presentations and workshops that he performs throughout the world. We're very pleased to have him here. It's been a pleasure to get to know him while he's here, and this is his first trip to Columbus, so let's please give him a good Columbus welcome.
Let's see if this works now.
Yeah. You want to get in that? There you go.
There you go. That's good. All right, good morning. You guys are a lot more awake than I am. My alarm normally goes, I don't have an alarm. My eyes open at 8. As far as I'm concerned, nothing happens before 8. I told my kids that God creates the world at 8 in the morning, so there's no point to wake up any earlier. And just to prove it, I opened my eyes one day and looked out the window and it was all gray. I was in Salt Lake and you couldn't see the mountains, so I said, see what I mean? He's stilled. He's just got the backdrop working on. Close your eyes till 8. It'll be there, I promise you. So I'm slowly waking up myself here. Thank you. It's lovely to be in Columbus. I actually went to university at Case Western Reserve. One of my friends came to University of Ohio, and my sister came to the University of Ohio, and that's all I know about Columbus, except it's in the middle of the state. So that's about it. Now, given that it's morning and people are kind of going to be drifting in, I like to do things in the keynotes other than just straight talk. So you'll find on your desk one of the 2 topics I'm going to be talking about. This is new. This is like within a month old. So I showed it to John Stahl. I don't know if he's in here quite yet this morning, but the guys from Lean Dog. And they're going to do the Agile Explained, and they've got like a 90-page manual that says, what is Agile? And I looked at that, and it's great, but it frightened me to death that Agile had gotten that complicated. So I found that in the last year, I keep going everywhere I go, and I say, look, this is too complicated. Let's simplify. Let's just go back to the center. Just always go back, restart at the center, work out. So I'm calling that the Heart of Agile. Go back to the Heart of Agile. And there's this nice Japanese word, Kokoro, which means spirit of or heart of in the translation. So I use the word Kokoro, and I'll talk about that. What's cool about this little thing that you see there, it says, as far as I'm concerned in Agile, there's only 4 things. You collaborate, you deliver, you reflect, you improve, and you go around and around. You do that over and over again. So that's nice and simple, right? Because you could just tell people, look, just collaborate. You don't have to read the first value of the manifesto at them. You say, look, just collaborate, just deliver, right? Then you have to think about it. And then you have to change something, do something different to improve. That's nice and simple to start with. But what's fun, and you'll see this, is that it expands. It expands. So what does collaborate mean? How do you collaborate? All the techniques around collaboration. Each of these 4 sections breaks out into all of the complexity that you could want to learn about. So what does deliver mean? Well, we've got lean, we've got Kanban, we've got queuing theory, we've got pair programming, we've got early delivery, we've got lean startup, there's a lot of math, there's a lot of stuff inside of deliver. What are you delivering for? How do you deliver? How do you deliver better? Just was talking last night about Facebook. They have an undeliver button, right? So not only do they have deploy with 1 button, 1 click, but they have 1-click rollback. That's pretty cool. So that's inside of delivery. It's why Facebook can deliver stuff so fast, is because they can undeliver stuff. But that's only good up to a point. Then you have to figure out how to get better. So there's all this stuff about reflection workshops. We're borrowing from family therapy these days in psychology. A thing called solutions focus, which is you don't do root cause analysis. You only talk into the future, brief coaching, stuff like that. And that gets us all into all forms of experimentation and things like that, right? So what's cool about this is it starts off simple, words everybody understands, collaborate. Look, are we collaborating or not, people, right? And then you can go into all of the depths of each of these 4 things, in grand detail. And one of the things I'll be doing is working with groups around the world to put together the big spider's web that's going to be, the grand unfolding of this thing, ad infinitum. And of course, some things sit in multiple, so pair programming is collaboration, but it also helps with delivery and, things like that. So I'm going to talk about that, but as a way of kind of warming you up on this, so the organizers were very kind and printed this up on your table. So what we're going to do, the first thing while we're all waking up together, is we're going to learn how to fold one of these little objects, right? So we're going to do origami in the morning. Hi, Mom, Dad, what did you do at work today? Well, we folded little bits of paper and made fortune tellers. Let me show you my fortune teller. So that's what we did. So we're all going to do this together, and then you can, play with it when you're bored with my talk. And do little fortunes to each other. So I've found that you can probably just tear it like this. You don't actually need the scissors. Like that. So I'm doing it with you, so I know how long it's going to take. And if you go to one of the sessions today, it would be fun while you're listening to the session to just kind of put your finger on which one of these things are they talking about at any particular moment. Are they on the collaborate part or the deliver part? Now, one of the things I like about this little fortune teller, this little diagonal, is 2 of them are very human-centric. So collaborate and reflect are totally about humans and human behavior and the mood and all of that kind of stuff. And deliver and improve are the more kind of, if I would say mechanical, which is not a good word, but the more mechanical process-oriented thing. That's where math, queuing theory, all the theory stuff comes in. I'm having trouble with this particular one, but it's the same as you guys. I'm sure I would tear this better if it was 9 o'clock in the morning instead of 8 o'clock in the morning. But I taught a class on Agile, and same thing, 100 people all tearing up little bits of paper first thing in the morning so that they would have this. This is going to make a very boring video. Sorry, people watching the video, look, you have to be here. You have to come here. That's what it's for. Okay, so I got my little 4 margins torn off there. So the way you do this, it's complicated the first time you do it. You fold into the white first. That's the main thing with the lines. You fold the triangles into the white. So I have that. That's why I have that facing you like that. So you can see that I'm folding it into the white. And one of these days I'm going to get, I don't have a graphics program that lets me do the right kind of a skew, but you see those crazy pictures there. Each of those 90-degree angles has to get turned into a 45, so it has to get squished from 90 degrees to 45. And then I'm going to get it so my ugly faces show up when you do the fortune teller and you go, you'll have alternately my wild face and my tame face. And then that'll teach you something, I'm sure. Good, so in case you get those done, so it should look like that with and then you fold the next ones inward. So you take those corners and you fold them inward now. And they were very kind and got us some nice paper. So this paper will last a little bit longer than your ordinary printer paper. And I'll give you, show you later the email. You just email me and I'll send you a PDF. The text on here changes like every couple of days because I'm just getting started with this. So, you kind of, it's like a subscription list, I guess, if you want me to keep sending you the new versions. You guys figured out how to do this stuff yet? All right, so I've got it all folded in. So then you're left with this square, where this is, the collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve thing on the one side, and some kind of the inside of tentacles on the other. And then the next tricky part, if you're not used to this, is opening it. So opening it's a little bit on the tricky side because, right, you got these little finger flaps here, right? You have these finger flaps there. There, and there. Good, all right. Does anybody get it done yet? Do we have any successful folders? Yeah, we got some people.
Hi there, how are you? The sock is going to give the lecture today. Sometimes with the left side of its mouth and sometimes with the right side of its mouth.
All right, somebody call out one of these things. Let's do it. Everybody says collaborate. You know how hard it is to spell collaborate? Oh my gosh. C-O-L-L-A-B-O-R-A-T-E. Your choice is trust, deliver, insights, and experiment. T-R-U-S-T. Your choices are collaborate, whip, reflect, improve. Your choices are collaborate, whip, reflect, improve. Improve. It says in here, what is one thing you might change to improve? What is one thing? One thing. This is in the micro change section. So with the solutions focus and brief therapy, the idea is you don't do a root cause analysis, you don't make deep plans for the future, you find one small thing to change, and you get very concrete about what that is, and then you do that. And then my friends who employ this technique never even reflect and say, how did that work? It's really fascinating. I haven't tried this out myself yet. They never even say, like I would go and say, so how did that work? They don't even do that. They just said, what's going better? What is the next thing you would like to change? Just like always, like walking into the future, just always walking into the future. So that comes off of that. What's one thing you might change to improve? So go ahead and, when you're bored with my talk, take a look at these things. What I found interesting about making this is that I got 4 words to start with, and I claim those are good 4 words to start with. And in each of those, I got 2 more words. And under those 2 words, I got to write a sentence. And there's enough white space in here, and this is on purpose, that you could write your own little piece of advice under each of those tabs. So I invite you, again, during my talk, when you get bored, like right now, to look at any one of these, like WHIP. The WHIP one says, how can you reduce the work in progress? But there's probably something else that you know about WHIP that you would like to write for your advice or your question to somebody else. And so what I hope you do is that you fill out your little 8 pieces of advice for these 8 topics, and then over the course of the day, when you meet each other, you play this game and you don't read out my answer, my little piece of wording, you read out your piece of wording, and then we start an exchange during the day of what you think is a thing around trust, or a thing around collaborate, or a thing around, insight. How do you want to give advice to your colleagues or just reflect out of your head? So I really hope that you all will write your own thing in there, and I'd love to see later in the day you guys are trading insights. That would be very cool. And so that's a way of building from the Heart of Agile and turning it into something that's really multifaceted and personal and got a lot of detail in it. So I'm going to talk, well, maybe not so much more about that since I covered so much of it at the beginning, but I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about the post-agile world. So as far as I'm concerned, those of you who know, in 2009, I gave a talk in which I said, it was called The Death of Agile. And it wasn't that it was dead, although that makes good advertising brochure. It was at an inflection point. And those of you who are mathematicians know what an inflection point is. It just means it's changing, right? So there's a moment of changing. In 2009, I said, okay, basically we've got it, it's done, it's crossed the chasm, it's there, it's solid. And so the old school, the 2 parts that's dead is that the stuff that we call agile came from the 1990s. And what I was saying, like, we're so done with that by now. It was 2009, right? So it had been, I started in 1991. I came up with my first methodology for the IBM Consulting Group in 1992. I was not allowed to give it a name, so it's the unnamed Agile methodology. It only had use cases, incremental development, CRC cards, coding, and performance tuning the code. And version control systems. So that's all the methodology had in it. So it was, you know, in a sense, my first version of an Agile methodology was in 92. We applied what I came to call Crystal Orange in 94, 95. That was with 50 people on a combination COBOL, Smalltalk, SQL project with mixed technologies, and that came out well. But basically in the 90s, we were working with 3 people. You know, we had a thing, we needed 12 Smalltalk programmers. And we said, you know, we could do this. If we could get 6 good Smalltalk programmers, we could actually just get this whole thing done. And said, can we get 12 good Smalltalk programmers? No. Can we get 6 good Smalltalk programmers? No. None of us had ever been on a project with more than 4 people. And then we had this 50-person project. So that was the experience in the 90s, and that's where Agile came from. And, you know, Ken Schwaber's going to talk before lunch about scaling Scrum. But the stuff that we wrote about in the Agile Manifesto in 2001 was basically, you know, 3 to 9, 12, 15-person projects. And by 2009, you know, look at this thing, it was going into IEEE and federal and regulated and medical and distributed and mission critical and, I mean, like every kind of thing. And so it's no longer the same game. So at that time, I just said, okay, I declare that we're at an inflection point. It's been absorbed and being changed. And so I just called it, you know, the death of Agile. Well, now, in 2015, I'm talking about post-agile. And what post-agile means is, it means I don't know. It means we don't know what it is. When someone says post something, it means we don't know what the successor thing is. We're in this range where the previous thing has kind of done its thing and we're doing beyond that, and we don't have a name for whatever that is that's beyond that. So we're in a post-agile world. And what triggered me to realize this was 2 years ago, I was in a course by Gabrielle Benefield, well worth looking up her name, and she's got a problem-solving methodology she calls Mobius. So it looks like an infinity symbol, and you go around this kind of racetrack in certain ways. And in one of her things is the word deliver. Right, so you do stuff and you deliver. So buried inside of the existence of that loop is the concept of Agile. Like you wouldn't even begin to think of this thing if you weren't already doing Agile. Like it's there. It's just in the subtext. It's words that presuppose, of course you have Agile done. And now, given that's like walking, here's ways to walk and ways to use walking. Yeah. So I went to her course, and at the end of that course, I said, okay, this is definitely post-Agile. We're not talking about the same stuff anymore. So I'm going to take a small section out of my theory, which is part of the delivery part, and talk about some disciplined learning, as I call it, which is part of the post-Agile. So there's 2 parts to this talk. So let's go back to the beginning here and take a look at the Agile Manifesto. And I call this title, you know, Agiles for Wimps. And those of you who think you are strong Agile people, no, you're probably wimpy Agile people is what I have to say. So let's take a look at the Agile Manifesto. It says individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And you know what, of course, that means is, yippee, I don't have to follow those stupid processes. And all the people here who are programmers and never like the process are going, man, I'm really happy with that. And all of those of you who are like managers and you're in the test department and you're, you know, whatever you are, you're terrified about these programmers who are not following any processes anymore, right? So programmers are real happy now. Anybody who doesn't like process is really happy. Okay, so working software over comprehensive documentation, you know, more happy programmers, woot, 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 dump the documentation, I love this stuff, right? And all the rest of you are busy cringing. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Yep, no contracts, I'm not done until I say I'm done, and I don't have to say when I'm done. I used to get that all the time. And actually, I was in someplace, and the guy comes into the room and says, I really love this Agile stuff. And it was a big company. I really love this Agile stuff. I just came out of a meeting and told him I didn't have to tell him when I was going to be done. I'm going to be done when I'm done, and that's it. And I said, I'm short selling stock in this company is all I got to say. It has no way to run a business. And we never said that. Said, no. This is really, Agile is really great when you've got a hard deadline. Don't give me that Agile means we don't have to give you an estimate stuff, right? Oh, is anybody, don't raise your hand. Is anybody, because I'm going to make horrible fun of you. Is anybody here from the no estimates movement? Yeah, don't raise your hand. It's terrible. That thing's a hoax, so don't do that. So, and especially I love working with retail companies because they got Black Friday, right? That's the day after Thanksgiving. And you don't get to say, and then we'll tell you how late we're going to be. No. At midnight 00.01, right, all hell breaks loose. Or you're doing stuff for the Olympics. Yeah, pardon me, can you delay the ski jumps for a bit? Because we just got, yeah, we'll tell you when we're ready. No, okay. So that's not what Agile ever meant. But that's the way people read it. Responding to changeover following the plan is the one that's caused us the most trouble because people mean no plans, no architects, no nothing. We had that discussion when we wrote it, and we said planning is very important because it gives you some insights about the structure of what you're doing and the world you're walking into, but plans go out of date super duper fast, so just get good at planning. So the way to think about Agile is we've got some really good high-speed planning techniques because we know that the plan is not going to last for a long time. Typically, 2 weeks is going to be the maximum length of time that a plan could possibly hold up. By the way, people say that software development should look more like the construction industry, not engineering, but even the construction industry specifically. So I have a little story I just want to tell you. Briefly, I was rich, and briefly I had what they called a starter mansion. And the starter mansion was up, it was an eco house, it was up on stilts on the ground, because it was, had an air envelope and all the rest. And my wife said, first thing is I want a basement. So all of you who say, people say, well, if you're going to build a house, you got to start with the basement. Let me tell you, no, you don't. Turns out there's a whole industry in retrofitting basements under houses. I didn't know that. So what they literally did, and I kid you not, they put in one giant beam under the house, they did some stuff, they jacked up the house by, however many millimeters, 2 or 3 or 5 millimeters, whatever they jacked it up. We continued to live in there, and they had a little baby, it's called a Bobcat, it's a baby bulldozer. They had a bulldozer driving around, digging out the dirt under our house while we were living in it. And I figured, well, if he's willing to drive around while we're living in it, I'm willing to live in it while he's driving around. He's comfortable. I don't know. I felt weird at night. This house is tipped by 3 millimeters over here. So what I wanted to say about that in the plans is and here's what was really cool. Talk about collaboration. This was a great, I had a lot of Agile stories off of that house remodeling, which took about, 3 years, what we all did. But the architect came in, really great architect. He's the guy who'd done the previous major remodeling, so I got the same guy. I loved his work. And he came in and he said, like a good architect does, we're going to put, beams here and ba-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-deep and stuff and thing, and had all this whatever he was going to do. And I was really lucky and had a very senior construction manager. It was just at a low time in the building industry, so I got the super experienced guy. And he says, why don't we just take a big beam and put it from one end of the house to the other? And the other guy goes, that's a pretty good idea. Yeah, let's do that. Right? Whatever, he had this complicated one. So talk about collaboration, right? So you had the DevOps guy, right? You had the guy who was going to put the beams in, telling the architect, you don't have to do whatever that funny truss system thingy you were building. You just take a big, if the beam's big enough and fat enough, you just stick a big beam under the house and you hold up the whole house, right? That's pretty simple. That was pretty cool. Anyway, so they had this big idea what they were going to do with the beams. And so they go and they take a sledgehammer. So we had the garage, concrete around it. All the rest of the house was up on stilts. And they take a big sledgehammer, and they go, and they knock out a hole about this big so they can look through to see what's on the inside. And they look in there, and they find that they thought all the beams were going, I'm going to get it wrong, it doesn't matter. All the beams were going this way, but in fact, all the beams were going this way. So their whole plan for what they were going to do to jack up the house just went out the window. And I said, God dang, these civil engineers are so efficient. It takes us 2 weeks to invalidate a plan. They invalidated their plan inside of 2 hours. That was awesome. Really, the software industry should look more like the building industry. That was amazing. With a lot of stuff. So they kept changing the bid because every time they found, the beams are going this way instead of this way, so the new bid is this instead of that. About the third time he did that, I said, can we stop with this fixed price bid, malarkey? I'll just pay you time and materials. He says, oh, There's extra risk involved if you do that. But I'll tell you what, if you'll carry the extra risk, I'll reduce my profit, my uplift margin from 13% to 10% or 5% or 8% or whatever he said. I said, what extra risk? You're just going to change the quote on me every time you find anything new. He goes, yeah, most people don't know that. So you're right. But if you'll carry the extra risk, I'll drop my profit margin. I go, done. And that was really great because, while he was in there, since we were paying, hourly, time and materials, I'd say, hey, the back fence is sagging. Can you fix the back fence? Yeah, no problem. Back fence. My kids wanted a secret tunnel from one room to the other. Hey, can you put a secret tunnel from the one room to the other room? Sure, no problem. And they didn't care. They were in there getting time and materials. I was happy. So we had a ton of stories. But what I just wanted to say was, apropos this bullet point, software engineering's got a lot to learn from the construction engineers, right? Martin Fowler said years ago, when it comes to cost overruns, software engineers are rank amateurs compared to the building industry. All right, enough of that. You can tell I'm warming up. So this is great. Where do I sign up? So the point is that the really good Agile teams don't run it that way. And when I show you the disciplined learning that comes, at the end after the Heart of Agile, you'll understand this stuff is actually pretty difficult. And I get this. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm an anthropologist, field anthropologist. I go and I interview project teams and looking for interesting things that they're doing. And the good Agile teams are doing stuff that's just, it's high discipline. There's no other way to, it looks like quick and sloppy and they're all code-based and stuff, but they're really, really thinking ahead and being very careful about what they do. So I'll show you some of the stuff they're doing. What I want to do next is just to go through on one slide, what is the problem domain we're living in? So we do, software is like, my favorite one is a cooperative game. It's like jazz. It's like engineering. It's like something. But I wanted to try to put on one slide what it is. What's this world we're working in without any analogies or metaphors? Just kind of lay it out. So I think I've got it on one slide for you. So when I go to a software development group, and this applies to more than software, as you'll find out. It's any group of people doing any kind of design work in teams, or almost even any kind of work in teams. You'll see it applies. And I'll just underline the one sentence that's sensitive to software. What you see is people. That's first of all, you see people. It's a pure mental activity that we're involved in. What are these people doing? They're doing one of three things. They're either inventing something, or they're communicating, and I'll put programming as, I was taught that programming is a form of communication to the next programmer and also to the computer. And they're deciding. This is all there is. And now you'll see why attitude, morale, trust, collaboration, mood, distance, all of those things are super important because there are only three moves in this game. You're either inventing something, communicating, or as a group you're deciding something. That's all there is as moves. Now we're solving a problem that we don't understand. And why don't we understand it? Well, because we just got started, right? So I want you to solve this problem. It takes time to learn the problem. So we just get started. We don't understand it. The problem keeps changing. And we're creating a solution that we also don't understand. Why don't we understand? Well, we just got started, so of course we don't understand it yet. And the solution keeps changing out from under us. And we're expressing our ideas in certain kinds of restricted languages, especially for programming, UI design, testing, stuff like that, that we also typically don't understand and typically are changing out from under us all the time. So we're in this situation where everything is something that's changing. We're getting to know it, and so there's a massive learning process, learning what world we're in and how we're going to deal with it. That's going on all the time, and that'll be the topic of the second half of the talk. Now, in the case of chemical engineering, civil engineering, software, your interpreter of your ideas is unforgiving of error, right? Chemistry, gravity, computers. If you're doing theater, if you're doing marketing, if you're doing other kinds of team activities, then the people will, you put the play on and you may make some mistakes, but you can get away with it, But if you make some mistakes and you ship the software, the thing just doesn't work. It breaks like that. So that's the only sentence in here that's sensitive to the fact of being in software. Now, everybody is making decisions. And the decisions that they make have got ripple consequences across the organization, right? So everybody's making decisions that have effect, and we're resource limited. So we'll never have enough people to do, really the ideal kind of a job. So this is what I claim on one slide is software development, and many other things also, but software development in particular. No analogy. So you go after this and you talk about, team building, collaboration, learning. We'll look at the implications of people making decisions and the ripple consequences and so on. So I like to come back to this slide and say this is the world we're in, and we're trying to deal with this world. Now, I always start my talks, or put early in my talks, the Shu-Ha-Ri progression. How many people think that they're familiar with the Shu-Ha-Ri progression? So some. So I can tell sort of who's new and who's experienced. Shu-Ha-Ri is a thing that I found when I was writing the Agile Software Development book around, let's just say around 99 or something, and it comes from Aikido. I found it in Aikido, and it matched what I was observing in terms of the way people listen to each other and then the way people perform. And it turns out that these words come from the Japanese no theater in the 16th century or something like that. So I'm going to go through those. The three words are Shu-Ha-Ri, and I'm going to add a fourth word, Koko. So Shu means follow. And if you go to a dojo, and I don't do martial arts, well, I did when I was younger, but when you go to a dojo, you don't ask the master any questions. The master makes moves, you copy the moves. If the master's bow-legged, you're bow-legged, right? It's like that. And so what turns out is when you're learning a skill, that's the way you come into skill acquisition. You say, give me one technique. So you're in a mode called learn one technique. And you copy the technique, and you evaluate yourself based on how well you do the technique. Now, there's lots of examples for this. I'll go outside of software for my favorite examples, but pie crusts, I still remember. Pie crusts are terribly sensitive things. You're not supposed to touch them very much, and you have to get the number of drops of water exactly right. So they're very, very fragile. When you get a good pie crust, it's a small marvel. My first pie crust I ever made in my early 20s, my sister and I decided to do this at Christmas, and we thought that pie crust was like bread, and you were supposed to knead it. Anybody do we have any pie crust making people in here? Yeah, you guys know what I mean. We kneaded it, yeah. So we had, you could just use them for right afterwards because you couldn't eat the darn things. So that's Shu. So for me, at the Shu level, if I'm making a pie crust and we need 19 drops of water, and you say 19 drops of water in the recipe, I don't care what altitude, humidity. I could be in the Amazonian jungle, or I could be in a high altitude desert. I'm going to put in 19 drops of water. I can't adjust. I just give me a recipe, and I'm going to follow it. And if it doesn't come out good, I'm blaming the recipe. Or I'm blaming me, I'm sorry, not the recipe. So that's Shu, and so we all come in. So I have a little picture that goes along with each of these things. So the first three are going to be around diving. The fourth one's not. So there's, we have a kid, and we're saying, bend over, right? All the stuff, and of course they always look up and then land on their belly, and so you say don't look up, and after a while they get that. So that's Shu level. Now the nice thing with Shu is it rhymes with shoe, and so we can make various puns and plays on words around shoebox. And so the first time I published this thing about Shu, somebody says that's funny because it's great because it's clear that one shoe can't fit all. Right? So, oh, that's very good. We can let the puns begin. And somebody else said, I'm tired of all of you agile gurus arguing about whose shoe is better than whose shoe, right? So my Scrum shoe is better than your XP shoe or something like that. And my stuff, Crystal, one of the reasons that nobody practices it has no shoe level technique, right? So there's no entryway into Crystal. Crystal's only for medium to advanced practitioners who go, yeah, I'm doing that. Right? But there's no doorway into doing Crystal because I just refuse to write shoe-level techniques for Crystal. Anyway, that's Shu, and there's diving. And the problem is that when people learn a technique, whatever it is, whether it's XP or Scrum or planning poker, Fibonacci stuff, whatever it is, they get trapped in what I call the shoebox. So you learn one technique and you make a nice little nest in the shoebox and you go, this is my technique, right? And you never want to move. So people like me are kicking you out of the shoebox all the time. So learn a technique that's cool, that's nice, it's broadly applicable, it's suboptimal. You can't run an international corporation with shoe-level techniques. That's for people to kind of get a feeling for like, this is what it is. Then after a while, you go, okay, this shoe-level technique has got limitations. I need something else. I need something more, right? So I do retrospectives. I do the simplest retrospective that ever could be done. I say, on the left side of the flip chart, list the things you want to keep that you don't want to lose. On the right side of the flip chart, list the things you want to try differently. I don't write down any problems, that's it. It's 2-column reflection technique, works great. But I go to some place and they haven't had a reflection workshop for 3 months, and I can sense that the mood in the room is really bad. There's a lot of sourness inside the organization. I can't do my technique because they have to do something else. So now I'm in Ha. That happened to me, and I was like out scouring, my friends in the internet, like I need a technique, a reflection technique that will allow me to allow emotional catharsis of, for people who've got a lot of built up, pent up frustration. So that's Ha. I'm looking for new retrospective techniques. So Ha means break. So you break away from your technique, but in technique land, it would be collecting techniques. Now you're in a mode. Now, okay, show me XP. Show me lean, show me Kanban, show me DSDN. I'm ready to look at Crystal for the first time, fine. Other retrospective techniques, whatever, right? Under that reflect banner, there's a lot of retrospective techniques that you could go and collect. So you could shoe level yourself into one and then Ha into many. So here's my drawing for Ha. I like this drawing. So that's me going off the bungee jump in New Zealand. And I went there. And I went to the home of where bungee jumps were invented. And that is about 40 meters high, so it's about 130 feet, something like that. And I still get vertigo when I look at that on my screen, right, if I put that in full screen, because I remember going off that thing. And I decided it's Ha, right? I'm not doing the like noom, 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 noom thingy there, right? I'm playing with it, but I've got a big fat cord attached to my ankles. I'm not going to kill myself, hopefully. There's a limited number of things I could do wrong, so I can play with it. I could use some techniques. I was practicing my swan dive on that one. I wanted to actually go off backwards, but they wouldn't let me. They said, no, the line's too long. Don't play around. Just go. All right, so that's Ha. That's a lot of fun. And if you get past Ha, the ultimate level is Ri. So Ri means leave. So that's when you're done with the dojo. You leave the dojo. You got into the world. You're done with techniques. So you watch people who are Ri-level in anything that they do, and you can't ask them how they do things because it's a full body experience. Ask somebody who's a good cook, anybody who's a good cook. Oh, this is wonderful. How did you make that? Well, I don't know. I put some stuff together, right? My mother did that once. She served something, and someone wrote to her and said, "Oh, that was Eve. That was delicious. What recipe did you use?" And she subscribed to Gourmet magazine. So she says, "Oh, it was Gourmet, volume something, page something." The woman calls her up later and says, "Eve, I made it, and it just didn't come out the same. Tell me, let's walk." And my mother says, "Oh, well, let's walk through the recipe." And she says, "Well, it calls for some kind of fish." Grouper, snapper, something. Oh, I didn't have any of that, so I just used salmon. Well, and it calls for something. Well, I didn't have any of that, so I just used this. As she went down the hall, there wasn't a single ingredient that she had used from that recipe. But from her perspective, she had followed it's just this recipe, right? So there was no chance. My favorite story, I've got a couple of stories about Ri just to show you how it works. My favorite one, two. My wife was a superb pastry chef. All of her family, they were Mormons, and so back in generations, they were very proud of their baking. They all made pastry shells, and hers were good, but her mother's were better, and her grandmother's were better. I mean, I became a real snob about pastry shells by hanging out with these people. And we lived in Salt Lake City, which is a high-altitude desert, and we moved to Zurich, which is basically sea level and a little bit more humid. And first thing she did, she arrived in Zurich, was to make some pastry. And it wasn't so good because everything was different. But she was just doing this to feel what it was, and then after that, it was fine. So I mean, she just made one for the sake of making one. And then, we ate it or threw it away or whatever we did. But after that, it was good. She didn't have to ask any more questions. That's Ri, right? She just went, okay, it has to be like this, right? You couldn't ask her what it was. It was just like that. My other favorite story about her was baking bread. And so my, about 10-year-old son, And bread is great, especially for kids, and if you have active kids, because you need to beat them and get the gluten going and stuff like that. So we're baking bread, and my son's going. If you could imagine, it was a lot of fun. So I call up my wife, who's driving across town somewhere, and I call her up and I say, what temperature am I supposed to put the oven on? And she says, it needs more water. Now that's good. Now I've got good ears, so I listened for a little bit, and I can hear it even now in my ears. You can hear the sound of bread that's too dry when you're going. Right, you can hear that it's too dry. So I go, okay, got it. We'll add some more water, and by the way, what's the temperature, right? But that's RE. That's the RE level people. Now to bring it to software development just for a moment, I was in Nokia just to show you how violently different the RE advice can get. So I'm at Nokia, and they say, hey, we've got problems with one of our Scrum projects. We have our UI designers in Helsinki, and the developers are in Beijing. The Beijing guys won't make a sprint commitment because they say the Helsinki guys are changing the UI spec all the time. I said, that's okay. There's a thing called pipelining. I don't generally like pipelining. It's got some of the disadvantages of waterfall, but there's time when you use it. So what you have is you have the UI guys freeze their design every 2 weeks. They ship over a new spec, and then the guys in Beijing have a frozen spec that nothing changes out from under them. They can make a sprint commitment off of that, and it's good. And they said, yeah, but we sent the guys from Helsinki over to Beijing, and they didn't have any trouble. And I go, well, that's completely different. That's the way RE people speak, right? They go, well, that's completely different. Don't you understand? Because while they're there, they're doing that collaborative, right, real-time collaboration, and the people who are the programmers get to talk. And when the UI designers are thinking about a change, they're thinking about it in the presence of the other people who have plenty of warning. They understand why it's coming, where it's coming. They have plenty of time to see the implications, while they're working. And when they say, okay, we'll try it, it's not a big deal. It's not like they come into work one day and the evil overlords from Finland have sent a change spec, and goddamn those evil overlords from Finland because they changed it out from under us again, kind of a thing. So I said, you have to run 2 absolutely opposing processes. If your UI designers are in Helsinki, you do the pipelining, and if they're in Helsinki and if they're in Beijing, then you do what's called concurrent engineering or parallel development, which you expect. So those are totally opposite recommendations. And look, it's the same company, the same project, the same people. All we did is move 2 bodies from here to here, and we have a totally opposite recommendation, right? So that's RE. That's RE level. So Shu-Ha-Ri. Now, one of the things that I want, so I have to show you my RE picture. So my RE picture is this one, and this is cliffs in Nice. I'm going to be going back to Nice in a couple of months, and I don't know if I'm going to do this summer, because there's a restaurant run by the police right next to that cliff, and I got one of the police officers to video me doing this dive, and I showed it to his boss, and his boss said, it's forbidden. And I said, oh, it's okay, I already got the video, so I don't have to do it again. And I have it in slow motion, so it's really cool. The thing about this dive is it's about 8 meters up, and you have to go about 8 meters out to hit the spot. You got that? And you only get 1 try. There's none of this, there's no harness and there's no bending over stuff. You leap off and you just do whatever you do. And I actually have, and I run low-tech slides all the time, but I have the video of me doing that I extracted those pictures from. It goes by real fast, if it works, because it's my first time I ever showed a video. And what I want you to watch is what I'm doing in the air. I can't make it slow-mo. I don't know how to do that. I'm not that clever. But in the air, you'll see I'm going like, I'm trying to get the altitude and the angle and the distance and the body position and the balance in this tiny amount of time to get the landing right. And I'm also going to see if I can get the sounds to come out. Let's see if this works or not. We're going to see what happens. Nothing. That's too bad. So what you'd get to see is like literally when I dive off, my body's like this, my body's like this, my body's like this, like I'm all twitchy trying to get things right. So that's RE level is the only point that I want to make. And then one of you Mac people can show me how to do this thing live afterwards, so I can show that later. Now, Shu-Ha-Ri's been around in the literature for a couple of hundred years, but I found I'm pretty, kind of happy and nervous because I found a fourth stage, which I've never found written up anywhere. And so I had to go and get a good Japanese word and symbol to match it to stay inside the progression. And here's the thing, when people get good at something, after a while, they start to get simpler. And if you think re-level people are annoying because they say it depends, right? Re-level people will never tell you anything because they just say it depends. The thing that comes afterward, which I call kokoro, kokoro means the heart or the spirit. Remember last year I was talking, let's go back to the center of Agile, let's go back to the center of Agile, let's go back to the center. So I found kokoro and it means heart or spirit. And when they talk, the great samurais talk about it, they talk about the kokoro of fighting or the kokoro of samurai. So that's exactly what I want for what we're talking about, the heart of Agile or the spirit of Agile or the center of Agile, like that. They get simpler. What happens after a while, people get simpler. And they get really annoying to talk to because you ask them anything, they say, just practice the basics. It's just the basics. Just practice the basics. Wax on, wax off. Wax on, wax off. Yeah, but what if you do, and he's standing, and you're wax on, wax off, right? You guys all know your wax on, wax off stuff, right? It's very, very annoying. Just practice the basics. And I've taken fencing lessons from masters, and they just make you do footwork till you go crazy. And I've been taking tango lessons, and every time I go there, all they do is they tell me I'm not standing right and I'm not walking right, right? So they say tango, okay, so the first thing you do in tango is like that. No, Alistair, no. This guy puts his hand on my chest, and he says, move your leg. He goes, no. You're using your outside leg muscles. Use your inside leg muscles. How do you make your leg go out that way using your inside leg muscles? Don't the inside leg muscles make your leg go like that? So I do this, and then he goes, now step forward. I go like, no, you're right. So hours and hours just trying. I go, do you do this when you dance? Do you have time when you're dancing to go outside leg muscles? Because it was no, So kokoro, these guys are maddening and annoying, and they taught me one kata. In tango. They gave me one survival move that contained like a turn and a pullover, and they said, you could just do that all night long and you'll be good, right? Learn this kata, you've got tango, right? So this is kokoro. This is like super annoying stuff. And so for my example, I went away from diving, because if I took a picture of a guy doing kokoro quality diving, it would be from one of these 30-meter platforms. They've got these high dive competitions, and the guy would do a swan dive. There would be nothing to see. Use nothing to see. You do that swan dive, you have to get that exactly right. At 30 meters, you have to get your rate of fall exactly right. And if you're going for competition, you can't look like you're moving a darn thing, right? It's all kokoro. Swan dive from 30-meter platform. So I took this thing. You guys have seen the movie Jiro Dreams of Sushi. Anybody seen that? It's about the best sushi chef in the world. He's like in his late 80s, and he goes, one of these days I'm going to learn how to cut that fish open right, And his poor son, who's probably in his 50s and is dreading the day when he has to take over his father's business. Now, what would you see if you watched Jiro cut a piece of sushi? What would there be to see? Nothing, right? There's a piece of fish. He takes a knife, he goes, and everybody, my gosh, how did you do that? And he goes, well, it's just the basics. You just look for the thing and there it is. Right? So the kokoro people are really annoying because you can't see what they're doing. And if you ask them, all they say is do the basics. Just do the basics. So I made this little graph because I'm a kind of an engineer. I love graphs of things. I actually gave a talk like this to the people in Argentina who do all their nuclear and space stuff. So it was kind of fun. So I had a room full of physicists, and they were all going like, what's Agile going to do for us? And I'm the kind of guy, I've got lots of graphs. So I just drew graph after graph after graph, this versus that, and charts and stuff. And they were really happy because they could see how things fit together. And I got to draw graphs that I'd never drawn for anybody else before. So this is my graph on this one. So here's what I've got here is this very strange thing that as people start off and they start learning, they start off simple and they get more complicated, right? Shoe level, give me a technique, 19 drops of water, I got that, right? Just don't tell me anything else, right? And okay, now it's different if it's high altitude and it's low altitude, right? And you're learning different techniques. I got 3 different retrospective. It's getting more complicated. Someone asks you, well, depends, see? And then So let's say for Shu level, just code stuff and ship it, right? And what's cool about Facebook is they stay there, right? Just code stuff and ship it, but they have the undeliver button, right? Rollback. That's really cool. That's the magic as far as I'm concerned. So just code it and deliver it. Then you get the HA and you say, okay, I got that. Now I got Scrum. Yeah. Oh yeah, but have you heard about Kanban? Oh man. And have you seen Reinert's and stuff on Lean? Oh man. And you know those DSDM guys, so I didn't even list Crystal in here. Sorry about that. So it gets more complicated, and then you get someone and they go, yeah, man, can't even tell you, man. Just like, oh, just do it, dude. And so what the heck is Kokoro, right? What is that going to be? Well, so that's what I want to get back to. So I was talking to a bunch of executives one time, and I was practicing the simplification, and I came up with a great drawing. I looked at all the stuff in my advanced Agile class. I've got this little origami with 5 chapters, and we go through it, and it's very complicated, and nobody ever gets it. And I keep teaching this advanced Agile class. And I had to talk to some execs, and so I decided that there really was a great simplification. And this is really true, this is drawing, which is either you're talking about people, right? That's trust, morale, collaboration, reflection, personalities, all that kind of stuff. And half of everything is people. Or you're talking about techniques and strategies. That's lean, that's math, queuing theory, WIP, early delivery, TDD. Those are all techniques. All the reflection techniques, they're all techniques. And we always talk about the techniques. That's the easy stuff to talk about. But I really want to say, whenever you're anywhere, listen to anybody talking. Just do this for a moment. Are they talking about the people, or are they talking about the techniques? As far as I'm concerned, you have to have both, right? You don't get to. That's cool. You can live all in the world. There are consultants who live entirely in the world of people. Joanna Rothman is a very people person. She's talking today. Esther Derby, Lissa Adkins, Michael Spade. They're just people. That's where they go and live. And there's people like Don Reinertson. He's into lean numbers, cues. It's math. It's techniques. So as you're going around, look at this. Is it people? Or is it techniques and strategies? People, techniques, and strategies? You need both. But that was too simple. It doesn't unfold correctly. It doesn't expand the way that we didn't have the properties we want. So I'm trying this thing, which has got the 4 words here, which I'm calling the Heart of Agile. And you get all these things. So collaborate. You collaborate to deliver. Why do you collaborate? In order to deliver. Now, some part of delivering is deliver to learn. This is the lean startup stuff. You deliver in order to learn stuff. So it was inside the Agile Manifesto, but kind of like getting outside of Agile, because the Agile Manifesto was about deliver, to make money. That's deliver to deliver. But these days, we're doing a lot of deliver to learn stuff. It's kind of part of the post-agile that we're doing. And then you reflect. Why do you reflect? You reflect in order to improve. So think of this: collaborate to deliver, reflect to improve. Now, so here's the nice thing is it starts to expand. So at the time I made this drawing, I chose those expansion words. I've changed some of them. I have under examine, I think these days I call it insights. It's not a verb, but I love it. Why? Because I'm very future focused. I don't like actually the word retrospective because it means looking back. In fact, I don't even like the word reflect anymore because that's also looking back. But I love the word insights because you do all the looking back in order to get something you can take into the future, and that's the insights. So this thing's changing all the time. But watch this. This is the next level of expansion. So I went to each of these. So under learning, just to take the top one, and that's one I'll talk about it coming up, you're learning about the business. You're learning about the social factors, technical factors, and cost factors. If you're in the income business or delivery business, there's all the queuing theory, there's early revenue, there's stuff like that. So this thing, each one of those will expand, and it'll expand more, and it'll expand more. So I like this because as a starting point, it's simple enough, it's good advice, and in playing the Shu-Ha-Ri game, it'll expand to lots of Shu techniques, and then Ha level, and then the Ri level. People, of course, will say, yeah, whatever, man, just get it done. So that's Heart of Agile. Email me. There's my email address. People don't know how to pronounce this. They go, to the Alistair? No, how does that work again? It's t'other, y'all. It's a little piece of dialect. Little piece of dialect for y'all. It's t'other. And that's because, the reason is because on Twitter, you're only allowed 15 characters, and I used to have the other Alistair. I'm never the first Alistair anywhere. So I figured I'd be the other Alistair. But it turned out I accidentally got the other Alistair on AOL.aim or net or something weird, and it blocked my AOL, so I couldn't be the other Alistair. And on Twitter, it truncated the R, so I was the other Alistair. And that really didn't work. So I went all dialecty, and I decided I was going to be T'other Alistair. So I'm T'other Alistair on Facebook, on AOL, on Gmail, on Twitter, so I'm T'other Alistair. So anyway, you want a PDF, send me an email. I'll send you the PDF, and I got a little folder for some people who have asked to be kept up to date, as I changed the little fortune teller thingy. It's kind of fun if you want. Send that to me. All right, time is now 10 after 9. We have a bit of time. Post-agile. So I'm just going to talk about this. It starts, oddly enough, with a section from my 5 origami things, which is how does design look like manufacturing? Why does design, how could it possibly look like manufacturing? Well, it turns out that everybody's making decisions, as I said, and decisions have ripple consequences. So in your organization, everybody is waiting on somebody else to make some decision. So if you make a graph, a decision dependency graph of who's waiting on whom for decisions, you end up with a diagram like this. Yeah, and you've got feedback loops and stuff. But the odd thing is, if you take the decision as the unit of internal inventory, like a car part would be an internal inventory, like stacked up in the factory, that if you make that your internal inventory is decisions, then design looks exactly like manufacturing, has all the same mathematical properties. So we're squarely into that strategies and math thing here, totally. But it's a big surprise. So we can actually borrow everything from the manufacturing industry, agile manufacturing, lean manufacturing. Every aspect of it follows. Where's the bottleneck station in the factory? Are we trying to reduce flow inside? Now look at this. If you have a big fat requirements document, how many decisions does it contain? Lots, tens of thousands, right? The quality, those are unvalidated decisions. We don't even know that we're asking for the right thing yet, but we've got them all done. And they're all dependent on each other. And they decay over time. Even if they were right at the time you wrote them, the world is changing. So the longer those, it's like having all white car parts and suddenly red is the new fad, and you're stuck with all these white car parts. So the bigger, fatter the requirements document is, then the longer those things are going to stay in the system, the more likely they're going to be wrong by the time they come out into the market, right? So we want to get smaller requirements requests, smaller requests for work. And then we want design to be working on smaller and test to be working on smaller. And then deploying tinier and tinier, right? And then you get single piece flow like in the manufacturing industry. So there's a lot of things you can do about this. So here's what the average organization looks like. And you get these like tidal waves of rework requests going back from test to programming, or you show things to the users and they don't like a bunch of stuff. And then they give you a bunch of rework requests back to the business analysts or product owners, whatever. That is a really ugly picture, quite frankly, and it's got very bad network properties, and I won't do the math for you. What you want to do is get to the single piece flow. Now, it's not like anybody's working any faster. They're all working the same speed. All you do, and this is actually the easy part, you just cut down the work into smaller work packets. And now your queue management becomes a lot easier, right? And the network properties are better, and everybody's working at the same speed, right? Now what's cool about this is you start to optimize globally. We are no longer in the IT department. We're talking end to end, and this is why at Toyota, they actually have their suppliers have a section of their factory because they need the proximity to get the integration of this from the suppliers into their factory. And the same thing's happening with Agile software development. You have to get your supplier chain and your delivery chain and everybody co-located. And I have examples and stories that I could tell about this, but I don't have time. So you don't change anybody's work speed. But you look at where the bottleneck station is and you apply money there. There's some strategies for load balancing across the organization. But it's really cool because with Lean and Kanban, we get outside of just IT focus, and we're talking about a global optimization around the company. But that's not what I'm after in this particular talk. I'm interested in learning. discipline learning. The problem is you have big wads of stuff going through. It takes a long time to learn, and when you make a mistake, it takes a long time to sift through that. So let's say you've got 50,000 or 100,000 lines of code, and they go to test, the tester people. So people make mistakes at the order of 3 parts per thousand. I believe still that number hasn't changed over the decades. So you put out 100,000 lines of code, you're going to have 3,000 bug reports. Actually, probably have more because the things conflate and mix in with each other. So you got 8,000. So you're a programmer, you've got a search space of 100,000 lines of code to find a mistake, right? But let's say that you deploy 1,000 lines of code to test department, and let's just say it's 3 per thousand, so there's 30 bugs. You have 30 bugs, but your search space is only 1,000, right? So it's easier to find. So learning is a lot easier when you come here. Now, where this all applies, I want to get back to this, and I changed one word on there. Instead of saying with languages, is with people they don't understand. So you're working with people that you don't know and who are changing, right? So we're solving a problem we don't understand that keeps changing, making a solution we don't understand that keeps changing, and working with people that we don't understand and who keep changing, right? Everything's the same. So if we look at this in a kind of a big bang, and you don't have to be doing waterfall for this, but most organizations have a fat delivery. Even if they have continuous integration, they have a fat delivery. Well, all the things you decided to build are stacked up containing errors, and they've also been, going out of date. And they deliver them. So all the learning happens at the end. Now, why is that big curve? That took me, years I've been talking about this, and it was only like about a year ago I realized that these two things are linked. The lean manufacturing, the reason that uptick is like that is because you've got 100,000 decisions that all get examined at the same time, some percentage of which get validated and some get invalidated. So there's this massive, unpredictable piece of learning that's going on there, so we don't like that, is the punchline. And so what we're going to do now is just take those small pieces of learning. I don't like the word failure, by the way. I don't ever say around me, fail early, fail often, and don't ever stand up in front of exec and say that. I just think that's the most impolite thing to say to an exec. We plan to fail early and fail often. Yeah, you're fired. I'll get somebody else. Thank you very much. You can leave right now. Right? I don't intend to fail. I don't like to fail. In order to not fail, I better learn early and learn often. And I better learn early so I have the maximum time to adjust to the situation to get the success at the end. And I got stories about that, but I won't tell you. So what we want to do is we want to stack up artfully, we want to stack up these little experiments or learnings or these investigations so that does this look like risk reduction to some of you? So we reduce risk. Turns out learning is more powerful a concept than risk is. So we have a learning curve that looks like this. We start off early. We learn cost, delivery, social stuff. How good are the requirements? What about the technology? How about performance and scaling? I don't ever want to hear agile means that you get to the end and you haven't done any scaling analysis. That's just silly. But that's early agile, early and naive agile, right? So we're in post-agile now. So you're going to hear about techniques that are not in the standard boot camp for Scrum or any of the standard XP Agile stuff. So you have a period of time where, in addition to delivering business value, you're also accentuating the learning. The idea is I want no late surprises. You can still get blindsided. That happens often enough. But we just kind of reduce the odds on that. So through artfully looking ahead, scanning ahead, and doing small experiments, trying to reduce. This is not locking analysts in a room for a year and a half like we used to. This is agile style experimentation, lean startup style. And you actually end up with 3 phases that I'd like to talk about there, which is you've got a learning period. It's accentuated a little bit on learning. Then you got the steep value delivery, and then you get this tail piece. Now these are features that are less interesting, but it's even aspects of features that you choose to or not choose to improve over time. Simplest example I've got for this is the iPad when it came out. Didn't have a modem. And all the Mac heads went out and bought themselves an iPad because they could use it on their Wi-Fi networks. And then some months later, iPad came out and they had added a modem. All the Mac heads went out and bought a second one because then they could be cool and have 2 iPads, and one with and one without. And, right? So Apple was a master of playing this, what I call trim the tail game, where they hit both windows, the start window and the end window. But if you've got a mega large operation like Nokia did with thousands of developers and hundreds of apps and products, You want to set an integration date, let's say, of June 1st. And if everybody's working this way and they're running late, there's no killer obstacle why you can't do integration on June 1st, because they all should be in the tail section, right? If they're running late, they're running late on the things that are least important or aspects of things, like the glossiness of the UI, the defect rates, right? You're working on code quality and you're working on bug levels and you're talking about usability, and there's certain kind of little elements of features you choose to defer in case you might have to cut them off, and that's the tail. Now, when I look at the business value accruing over time, I don't see what you often see in the intro Agile literature, where they make the business value growing over time look like that smooth curve. What I see is, yeah, boss, we got it. We can do it. No problem. Wait. This platform doesn't perform as expected. Wait, we'll get back to you shortly, right? You know, that kind of stuff. So the business value curve is this kind of a wobbly thing like that. And I just want to say that. So like we're getting past all the standard myths, you know, back of the Matchbox advertising for Scrum or Agile or something like that. And there's 4 things we're going to learn about here, which is business, social, technical, and cost schedule. So the business one is, the risk reduction form is, are we building the right thing? I can tell you the answer is no. So now we've got that answer taken care of. The question is, what should we really be building instead of whatever we thought we should be building? How would we learn what it is that we should be building compared to whatever it is we thought we should be building? And this is where all the lean startup stuff comes in. It's all manner of experimentation. I mean, the very simplest one is paper prototypes that you run, have real users come and visit you, ambassador user, fake deployments, manual delivery, empty clicks. There's a whole bunch of literature around how to play that game, right? But what you're trying to do is to hone in on the what should we be building earlier, so you throw away less code. Yeah. The second part is social learning. The risk reduction question is, did we get the right people? And the answer may be yes or no, but even if you have the right people, it takes time for them to learn to work together. And I met a guy who's been in this project management arena for decades, and he's got a simulator. It was fascinating to me. In his simulation, like not connected to Agile, he has that if you don't do social activities and social binding things, if you don't allocate time to that at the beginning, within a few months you're running slower. So he has an Agile version with sprints, and by sprint 3, the teams that are just going straight for code have been passed up by the teams that did some social bonding and social. So there's a lot of techniques of ways to help people learn how to work with each other. So it's a social learning that goes on. The third one is the usual stuff, technical. So you do your performance management, your scaling, API checks early on to make sure your design's right. And the final one that is nowhere in the Agile literature is a thing that I call core samples. So I visited some teams, and they go straight through. They look at the suspicious parts of the API for some major upgrades and say, is it going to be as easy as we think we are? Let's implement some stuff. And if it's not as easy as we think, how major of a rewrite is this going to be? It's all internal. You know, it's the one I'm thinking about is a small, medium-sized company, but it was being funded by the CEO, the president, and their investors. And they wanted to know, for this major new client, is this a major rewrite of a system, or is it a nice, tidy upgrade? And it turned out, I think it was a major rewrite, and they needed to know that in order to do budget planning and make their plans around stuff. So they did these core samples, and that's not anywhere in the Agile literature, because our Agile literature comes largely from extreme programming, where Kent Beck said, just do it. The assumption is you've got a good customer, you've got the right request, you've got a good team, you just build it, right? So that's come into the mythology. That's a Shu-level technique, is you take your product owner in Scrum and you say, give us all the stuff, business value first, from 1 to 2,000, we'll just start on number 1, and we'll take it and work the way down, right? That's Shu-level. We talked about Shu-Ha-Ri and non-optimal, right? So it's Shu-level, and it's not done by the best teams, because that's suboptimal. So it's very cool. There's the trim the tail thing. So what that gets us to, if you do this, there's a thing called story splitting. that's not in the Agile literature either. And I'll give you an example of this. So I'm doing my website, brand new content management system, start from the ground zero, totally empty, database, and working with this guy 2 mornings a week. And we go for some number of weeks. We go for like about 2 months, and however long we're doing. We got all the little, stuff. And he's very quiet. This guy's like an introverted programmer from Minnesota, if you know what I mean. This guy's so quiet. You have to listen to his silence to figure out what he's on about. That's really tough. So his first silence was he wasn't talking about a topic, right? So after maybe about 2 months, I go, hey, we haven't talked about data migration. I got about 1,500 pages in media wiki markup format. We're going to have to convert to textile. And we haven't talked. So anyway, we haven't talked about the data migration. I'm standing about this far. This would not have worked over a video link, by the way. He's standing about this far from him. And his eyes go. So I go, you're not comfortable with that topic, are you? And he goes, no. And I go, you don't know how to do that, do you? And he goes, no. And I said, guess what we're doing this morning? Like now. And it was good because we would have gotten to the very end. I would have had 1,500 pages to convert. And he says, I don't do that stuff, right? Outsource it, hire somebody, whatever. We spent the next 45 minutes, called up all his friends, sent out things, whatever, found some stuff online, pulled it in, made some test samples, converted a little bit. At the end of 45 minutes, we were done, right? We knew that we could, what it looked like to do it. And now we could rest, now we could relax, and do the actual conversion, obviously, at the very end, right? So that's story splitting, not written up in any of the literature, but you can take a story and you split it into the risk aspects or the learning aspects, the value aspects, and try to find some tail aspects, things you could leave out, because you are going to run out of time. And so if you do this, here's a version of a plan where you have it. I've offered this. I haven't seen anybody do this like on paper, literally, and there are obviously no tools to support it quite yet. But these people who had like 7 different customers or inside of a big company. So they were they had 7 different departments that they were providing for, and they were given an assignment of what to accomplish in the next 3 months. Obviously, they were not going to get through all of it. So I proposed to them they put their learning aspects for each down there, and the value aspects, and make sure to put some tail aspects. Now, in the standard Scrum literature, the way you go through this is 1 row at a time, right? If those were user stories or backlog items, you would go all 3, done, 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 right? But there's no need to do that. You could do all of them in learning order first, and then value, and then tail. Or you could do wiggly-woggledy, based on whatever you think is most important. So you can strategize your way through this map. This is a lovely map of what's ahead of you that allows you to trim the tail artfully at the end. Now, I think that most people don't know what the tail parts are very well at the beginning, but if you just keep this like active and you're aware you're going to have to trim the tail, you keep track of what are we going to have to learn about those 4 topics, what are the value centers for each of those, what are some tail aspects. Now you can do true incremental and iterative development, right, and maximize the delivery of this. And so this idea comes largely from Jeff Patton, whom I quote a lot, who spent about 2 years hitting me with a stick trying to explain what it was he was doing. And after I finally understood it, I said, oh, I do that in my private life all the time. I never do that at work, which is very bizarre. And so now I'm bringing it back, to the software world. All right, so that's about, kind of like the end of my time. Just for fun, we're going to do a webinar, and I'm going to partner up with Maria Mattarelli, and we picked the 4th of June. And rather than give you a URL, we've got this funny thing with the phone number. So I'm trying this for the first time. So I like move on, whatever. Is that an elementary particle? 6686. Anyway, you text that, SMS that, and it'll send you back a link to the website. If you want to come and listen to the webinar, that would be fine. All right, now, I'm at the end, and I'd like to take a question or 2 before we leap off. I don't like it when speakers don't take any questions, but let's just see what we get for some questions. Oh, good, I can't see any hands. So you guys are deep after your coffee break. Is there anybody? Who wants to pick it? Yes, we have one over there, please. There's a microphone coming your way. And if you guys, is there a second mic by any strange chance? Yeah, does anybody else have a question you want to, we'll put a mic in your hands.
There you go. All right, thanks.
Here, yes, no,
Go ahead.
no.
We got one.
Yeah?
Ready?
Is there a second question? Somebody raise a hand and he'll study up where it is, and we'll take this question here, please.
How does emergent design tie into your learning and your tales?
Yeah, emergent design actually ties in very well. I am a bit suspicious about the word emergent design, just by the way, because emergent has two meanings, and one means if in physics there's a layer below something where when you go a layer above it, you can't predict what happens. Like you can't predict the pleasure center being activated by the smell of a rose by looking at the molecular components of a rose, right? So that's called emergence. That's an emergent stuff. It means I can't predict. There's a different kind of emergent, which is I'm coming out of a fog. And if we take emergent design not being the I can't predict one, but rather I'm coming out of the fog one, what we're doing is saying, let's start with something simple. And here's the surprise. With good modular design principles, we can restrict the trajectory of change when we change certain things. So I've seen people who started with, when I visited them, they were going to IBM MQ series for queuing thing for some big stuff. But they had started literally with a remote procedure call. Then they made their own little baby queuing thingy, and then they were swapping it out for MQ series. But because they had tidy design, the impact of the change, was limited. So although it was a significant architectural change, it didn't cause much damage. So the emergent design part is, we'll take something now, but if you do emergent design and you get yourself into a place where your performance sucks or your scaling sucks because you just didn't study up on something, then I'd say that was a learning failure, right? If you're going to think you're going to have a lot of users concurrent at the same time or high load, you should be running what's called a spike. It's all in the literature. It comes from XP. This is like the spike was documented in the mid-90s or something like that, or late 90s. So you do a spike to investigate that. So it goes in your project plan that you're going to do a spike around performance, right? So this thing will last us how long? Okay, we're going to get MQ series. How long does it take for our team to install that? And what are the performance characteristics of MQ series or of our homegrown series? So the spikes help you do that learning as you're going into the emergent design, emerge from the mist kind of emergent design, yeah? And you're gaining knowledge, the team gets stronger, and then they get ready for that. Very good. Is there a second question? Did we find a second question? 10, 9, 8, 7,
One back there.
6,
I got one.
5,
Got one. I'm running, Alistair.
3, 2,
Yep,
One.
just in time.
a half.
One question.
Third.
So a question was about deadlines. When you're given a deadline for a project, fixed scope, fixed timeline. It sounded like the trimming the tail was a very good technique for using that, delivering the top value first. So it's obvious that what's at the end is of least value. So you really don't have to do it if you can choose not to do it and still deliver. Are there any other techniques when you're faced with that type of scenario that work really well?
Thank you. Good question. What strikes me as odd, a lot of Agile people get bent out of shape when they're asked for a deadline. And the reason that strikes me as odd is Agile is absolutely suited to hard deadlines. It is the best game out there for hard deadlines. If you're doing something for the Olympics or for Black Friday, that's a serious hard deadline. Or in the EU on the 1st of January 2015, Estonia was joining the Economic Union, the European Union, and had to have all of their banking stuff, compliant. Right? Those are serious hard deadlines. Agile's the only game in town, as far as I'm concerned. Now, the trim the tail's great. This came from Jeff Patton. His boss would bid 4 or 5 month fixed price, fixed scope projects for them, and they were always overbid, like, as is usual. So he came up with this technique to survive the fact that they were always overbid. So my view is you do that discipline learning stuff early, the cost schedule. If you're totally going to not make it, say so early. Don't do the we'll be agile and tell you like a third of the way through, oh, by the way, we're not going to make it. No, that's really bad work. That's very unprofessional as far as I'm concerned. So you do your studies. If you're going to not make it, say so early. Now, once you then accept that you are going to get close enough, trim the tails you gain. That's when you get hardcore on it. And this is what Jeff was so good at describing to me over and over and over again, how we prioritize stuff. He says, I hate this product backlog in Scrum. Like you never get to revisit something. And he uses grade levels. So he says, I want everything built at the grade level C, right? A, B, C, D, F. Build it at C, and then if I have time, I get to decide, do I want another item also at C, or do I want to take one of the existing items and make it a B? But that's my choice as the business person, which way I get it. And I don't get to do that with the shoe level Scrum stuff. So I'm glad you asked the question, because if you're going to fail, if you're going to abort early, spending the least amount of money. So do that study up. That's the learn early. And if you're in for it, then you play trim the tail like with a vicious mean streak, so that you can get whatever you can. Usually, if somebody says, we have to have these features by Black Friday, they're the level of bullet points. And so Jeff Patton wrote a wonderful paper in 2004 Agile conference called Unfixing the Fixed Price Contract, in which he talks about basically you want the requirements in kind of a fuzzy form so that you can play with what fidelity and wonderfulness you do each of the so each of the bullet points is there, but then what you use for the tail is like how fancy are those bullet points. That's really cool. Thank you. We got some questions, and now it's time for break. So have a very nice break, and I'll see you guys around. Thank you.